welcome to the workshop to create a React-based theme on WordPress with Frontity. Great to see we've got over 40 participants, 44 participants now. Wow, welcome. So I'm Michael. I am going to be presenting this workshop, but I'm not alone. I'm joined by a couple of the other guys from Frontity who are going to assist me. So I am just going to bring them on screen. To introduce you to them. Sorry, I'm doing a couple of things at the same time here. Juanma and Michal are helping me on this workshop. So if you guys would both like to just share your video.
Hello.
So welcome, Juanma. Thanks for helping out today.
Hi, hello. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, Michal, for helping out. So Michal and Juanma are going to assist me while I focus on presenting this workshop. They are going to be answering your questions. And I'm very glad that they're here because there are 3 ways that you can ask questions. And on my own, I wouldn't be able to monitor them all. Of course, you can ask questions in the Zoom chat. You can also, if you look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see a Q&A button. You can ask questions in the Q&A. And there is also the Discord channel. So I don't know, Juanma, Michal, should we suggest a sort of the premier channel that people should ask questions through?
Yeah, I think that is better if you guys ask questions in the Discord channel as a primary option, because we'll be mainly monitoring that channel.
Okay,
but
somebody in the chat has just said Discord doesn't work for them. Okay, so let's do this. Discord will be our primary means of communication. So please ask your questions in Discord. If you don't have access to Discord for whatever reason, as one person already says they don't, then use the Q&A and the chat. But Juanma and Michal will primarily be monitoring the Discord, and they will occasionally check the chat and the Q&A. So if you're using chat and Q&A, you may not get as rapid a response as you would in Discord. So please use Discord if you can, and only use the chat or the Q&A as a fallback if you have to. Does that work for you guys, Michal and Juanma?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Perfect.
Sounds great.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, everyone, well, we have 57 participants. Okay, well, I mean, we can rule out myself, Michal, and Juanma because we're hosting. So that means we've got 54 participants. Excellent. Please introduce yourselves. Just type into Discord or into chat if you haven't got Discord. Say who you are and where you're zooming in from. City and country would be great. Give us an idea of the demographic that we're reaching here. So I'll give you a few seconds to. Okay, the guy who or lady, or sorry, the person who had a trouble with Discord has just put in chat that they've got it working. Excellent. So hopefully, most of our communication will come in via Discord. Sorry. But Juanma, Michal, please just occasionally monitor the chat just in case something comes in there for somebody who can't use Discord. Whoa, we've got somebody from Argentina and Colombia. suppose it might be worth mentioning that Michal's currently in Peru, aren't you, Michal, in Lima?
Yeah, that's right.
So
that's
we've
right.
got
So,
several people in from the South America here.
Yeah, wow, that's
Awesome.
quite a so many
Several
people.
people from the UK, from the US, Norway, Canada, Vancouver, Medellin, Colombia, Singapore. Wow, we're spanning the time zones here. Delhi, India. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, well, keep your intros coming in. And let's kick things off, shall we? So one more, Michal, if you want to just kill your video for the time being. I need to, what's happened to my browser? Ooh, what has happened to my browser? Nope, not that one. Oh, I had a browser window open just now, and I can't. No, it's over here, right? Okay, it was because it was full screen. Duh. Okay, let's just kick things off. You can still, can everyone still see my screen? Am I still sharing? No, I'm not sharing my screen anymore, am I? So let me just fix that. Okay, so welcome to Build a React-based theme for WordPress with Frontity. Okay, I'm Michael Burridge. I am the part of the developer relations team at Frontity. And you can find me on Twitter at Michael Burridge. Oops, what's happened there? Bear with me just a second. Right, present again. Things went a bit weird there. Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Michael Burridge. And if you want to tweet about this workshop, or you want to tweet about anything else you're planning to do with Frontity going forward, then please use the at Frontity Twitter handle and tag us in your tweets. That would be awesome. So let me say a bit about Frontity, the company. It was founded in 2015 in Madrid in Spain. It was originally called Worona, was founded by Pablo, Luis, and Fernando. Pablo and Luis are still with the company since it was rebranded as Frontity in 2017. We're a fully remote team of 8 spread across 3 different countries. And we have a mission to help developers build performant, scalable websites with WordPress and React, and to do that easily. Originally, it was called Worona, and they rebranded as Frontity and developed a product called Frontity Pro, working with 4 big Spanish publishers who had WordPress sites and needed them to be more performant. And they built a framework for it. I say they because all this happened before I joined the company. You know, so it's been it was called Frontity Pro, and that was so that was fully battle tested in very high in websites, you know, that have a high number of visitors. Then in last year, just in fact almost exactly a year ago, the open source and free version was released, and version 1 was finally released, last June. That's released under the Apache license version 2. So it's fully open source and will continue to be so. And Frontity also have support from Automatic and Google. Automatic, of course, are the people behind WordPress and WooCommerce and Jetpack and Gravatar. They are amongst our investors. And Frontity was also selected by Google for Startups to participate in their residency acceleration program. So, if you've not come across Frontity before, it is fairly new. So you'll be forgiven for not having encountered it before, but I guess you probably heard of it since you're joining the workshop. Essentially, Frontity combines React and WordPress to create super fast websites using a modern build approach. So one of the primary things is to create a great developer experience, and there should be a plus sign in there between the React and WordPress logos. I don't know what happened to that. Yeah, so that should say Frontity equals React plus WordPress, but not sure what happened to the plus sign. Things never go quite right when you're actually doing it, do they? Oh, and there it is. Weird. Okay, there it is. Okay, so React. I'm guessing, since this is a JavaScript conference, that React needs very little introduction, and I'm sure most of you already know that it's a JavaScript library for building user interfaces that is declarative and component-based. Now, WordPress, I guess these days it's not considered that cool, especially amongst React developers, I think. But it is solid, it's well established, it's robust, and it's continuously maintained by a large community of contributors. One of the great things about WordPress is that it has such a great community. I think it's got one of the best communities in the open source space. It started as a blogging platform. It was created by Matt Mullenweg and Mike Little in 2003, forked from the B2 Cafe Log, which was an earlier blogging platform. It's much more than just a blogging platform nowadays, although it started life as a blogging platform, because it supports custom post types, custom taxonomies. So it's a fully fledged CMS now, and in fact, it's the world's most popular CMS, and it powers 35% of the web. As of version 4.7, which I think came out in 2016 or 2017, I'm not sure exactly, it now features a REST API, so it can now be used as a headless or decoupled CMS, so it's not tightly coupled to its own sort of theming infrastructure. And because it's so popular and so widely used, the great advantage of using WordPress and why Frontity is so focused on WordPress is that it is very familiar to content editors and content creators. A lot of people who are less technical than you guys attending the workshop know how to use the WordPress admin pages to create content and do basic configuration. So there's a compelling reason to use WordPress as a CMS just because of the user base out there, of people who are familiar with it to create content. So Frontity, as I said earlier, combines React with WordPress and enables you to build React-based themes for headless decoupled WordPress. So it'll consume content via WordPress's REST API. It renders the site as a single page application. So as you navigate the site, data is fetched in the background, and so it's always ready for instant rendering. So most of the time, when you're browsing a Frontity-based site, you've got 0 wait times for content. It's fully WordPress focused, so each part of the framework has been simplified and optimized to be used with WordPress. It's an opinionated framework, so developers don't need to figure out or make decisions about what tools to use for things like CSS or state management, or how to make queries to the REST API. So Frontity can be considered an alternative rendering engine for WordPress, i.e. alternative to the traditional PHP themes that WordPress is usually based on. So key features of Frontity: there is 0 setup. Everything's already wired up for you. Routing, the fetching of the data, Webpack for building, and so on. And it's fully optimized to be used with WordPress. It supports server-side rendering, so it's SEO friendly. I'm sure you all know that how important SSR is for SEO. It's extensible in that you can add new themes and functionality to your Frontity site via packages, and that's exactly what this workshop is about. We'll be looking at creating a new theme or building a package that will be the theme. It's got dynamic rendering. You know, unlike say Gatsby, you don't have to rebuild the site every time new content is published or any minor edits to content. Frontity actually fetches the data from the WordPress REST API dynamically. It's serverless ready, so it will work as a static site generator. Uses serverless pre-rendering. Which is basically uses serverless pre-rendering is actually, I think, Vercel's sort of branding of stale while revalidate, which is a cache control directive. And it supports both WordPress.com and WordPress.org, so it'll work with the Automatics hosting platform, which is WordPress.com, but it also works with self-hosted WordPress sites. Other features are, it's got TypeScript support. It supports ES6 in modern browsers, but will fall back to ES5 for older browsers. And it's, and it delivers a very fast time for important lighthouse metrics, such as first contentful page and time to interactive. The page is ready for user interaction almost immediately and before React hydration is complete. There's 3 main points that justify the combination of WordPress and React as implemented by Frontity. The first one is it provides a modern user interface and a great user experience for visitors to the site. It maintains a great developer experience for the tech team in charge of building and maintaining the site. And as I mentioned earlier, due to the familiarity with the WordPress admin pages, it delivers a great content manager experience for content creators and content editors. So everyone's happy. So let's look at basically how Frontity works. So you still use your WordPress dashboard to edit and manage your content in exactly the way that you might be accustomed to. And as you make content changes, they're automatically updated in your Frontity site, just like it does when you use a traditional WordPress theme. Now, Frontity apps normally require a Node.js server to run on, and this runs in tandem with the WordPress site, which is now relegated to a mere CMS providing content to the front end based on Frontity. So yes, you do need two servers. You need WordPress running on a sort of Apache MySQL PHP stack, and you need Frontity running on Node. Though Frontity can run on a serverless environment as well. So you can serve your Frontity sites over a CDN. So Frontity requests content from the WordPress REST API and uses it to generate the final HTML that's displayed in the browser. It's also isomorphic, which means that you use the same code on the client and on the server. So for example, you shouldn't use something like window.location.href in your code as to change the current URL, for instance, because the window object, although it's available in the browser, is not available on the server-side rendered version of the page. But Frontity provides state and actions that work on both client and server that fulfill these, a function like that as well. So let's just quickly compare Frontity with some other similar frameworks. So what could you use in place of Frontity? You could use Gatsby, but that uses GraphQL, so you'd need to know GraphQL. And with GraphQL, WordPress doesn't natively support GraphQL. You'd need to install the WP GraphQL plugin to get Gatsby working. There's Next and Nuxt if you're using Vue. Whoops, sorry about that. But the advantage of Frontity is it's focused completely on WordPress. If you're using any of the Gatsby or Next or Nuxt to connect to a WordPress site, there's quite a lot of configuration you need to do, quite a lot of knowledge about the interaction between a JavaScript-based front end and the WordPress backend that you need to know about. And all of that is sort of handled for you by Frontity. So that about wraps it up for the sort of the introductory slides that I wanted to cover. So let's get right. Let us get stuck in to the tutorial. Let's just have a quick look at what is happening over on Discourse. Have we got who else have we got? Right, more people coming in from the USA, from Honduras. Awesome. Oh, Shah says, can we record this meeting? The meeting is being recorded. The JS Nation team should be recording this already. I've never used WordPress before. Yeah, WordPress. So M. Higley asked, does all the typical security procedures stand as being just as important when used in this framework? Not sure what you mean by security procedures, but I would have thought, you can hide your WordPress site. If you've got a limited number of content editors and content creators, you could limit the WordPress admin pages to just the just their addresses, so that only their IP addresses, so only they can get in to make your WordPress site more secure. But Frontity just delivers HTML, from a Node server. It should be at least as secure as a WordPress site. Okay, but great to see Juanma and Michal are answering questions, and I see we've also got Luis from the Frontity team also helping out with questions. Thanks, Luis. And yeah, and thanks Juanma and Michal once again for helping out. Right, how are we doing? Wow, I've spent over 20 minutes just on the intro. Didn't intend to spend that long. Right, let's get stuck into the tutorial now. You're going to need Node installed. I presume since it's a JavaScript conference, you're all JavaScript developers, so you should have Node installed already, hopefully. You're obviously going to need a text editor. I'm using VS Code. You'll need a browser. And although I said in the original notes that you would need a installation of WordPress, if you've got your own installation of WordPress, that's great. If not, I've got one set up that you guys can all connect to as we build out our theme. So, and you might want to use the one that I've already set up because I'm using the WordPress theme unit test content, which gives you lots of edge cases for testing and developing themes, so you can make sure that, everything renders correctly. And so all that content is on the site that I've developed, but feel free to use your own WordPress site if you want to. Okay, so I'm using VS Code. You can use whatever text editor you want. I'm using VS Code because it's got because it's great, because it's my default text editor, but it's got a built-in terminal. If you're not using VS Code, if you're using something like Sublime Text or Atom, then you need to open your terminal as well, at least for the first part of this tutorial. Select the folder that you want to install your Frontity project into. I'm using sites. When we run the install, it will create a new folder. So you don't need to create a folder specifically for Frontity. So if you've got like a projects folder or a sites folder like I have, when we run the install procedure, a new subfolder will be created with the project in it. So just select your folder. While you're doing that, I'm just going to say that I'm going to take this at a fairly easy pace. The idea behind this is that you should participate. That it's a workshop, so you should be doing on screen or echoing what I do on your own computers. It's not the sort of thing where you should sit back and watch. You'll probably end up falling asleep because it's going to be, like I said, quite easy pace so that everyone can keep up and to run their commands, to make the changes to the code, and to check the results in the browser. So I'm going to allow time for all of that. So yeah, so I hope all you guys will get fully engaged and follow along with what I do. So I hope you've all selected the folder where you want to install your site, and then run npx Frontity create, and then a name for your project. So I'm going to call this one JS Nation Frontity and press enter. At this point, you get prompted to pick a starter theme. There's two starter themes come built in by default, Mars theme and 2020. 2020 is a Frontity clone of the WordPress 2020 theme, the PHP version of it. Mars theme is a kind of starter theme, a kind of bare bones starter theme. If you've ever done any development with WordPress, theme development with WordPress, and you've used underscores, I suppose it can be most closely compared to underscores, as it's like just a bare bones kind of getting started theme that you would normally build upon. It doesn't really matter which one you select. We're going to select Mars theme for now. It doesn't matter because what we're doing in this tutorial is we're actually building a theme. We're actually not going to use either of those themes at the end of the day. We're just going to use the Mars theme initially just to check that everything's working. So we're just going to wait while we install the dependencies. Then you get asked if you want to sign up to our newsletter. Well, yes, of course you want to sign up to our newsletter. Why would you not? I've already signed up, so I'm going to say no. And it's cool if you want to say no as well. We also get, we all get too much spam, don't we? But if you change your mind, you can, as you can see, there's a way of subscribing subsequently, and you can do it from our website as well. Okay, let's test that things are working, but let's do just a basic test. If we just cd into the folder that has just been created, in my case, it's JS Nation Frontity. If this is all new to you, I suggest that you create the same folder name and follow along pretty much exactly. So I'm going to change that. I'm just going to do a check that everything's there, and then run npx Frontity dev. If you're wondering about npx, why I'm not using npm and why I'm using npx instead, npx is a kind of, well, it's not really remote execution. It's kind of like remote execution, but what it does, it downloads it downloads the package to install. Doesn't install it, but it runs it a single time and then removes it. So let's run that. And it's opened it up in my other browser window. What you should find is that it'll open up a tab in your browser. I've got several Chrome windows open at the moment. It opened it up in one of the other ones that I'm using for reference. So I am going to just type localhost 3000, but yours should have opened automatically. What you can see now is this is Mars theme. You can see it's kind of a bit bare bones, a bit basic, and what you can see here is kind of just sample content from our sample site, and you can see how, if you just have a browse, you can see how fast and responsive this site is. So I'll give you just a few seconds to just have a quick browse around and just play around with seeing how quick it is. It's so much faster than than if this site was built with traditional WordPress theme. Okay, so let's go back to your terminal and Control-C out of that. What you now want to do is open the folder in your text editor. So one of the other great advantages of using Visual Studio Code is it treats a folder as a project. Unlike with Sublime Text, you don't need to sort of create projects separately. You don't have to create project files. As soon as you open a folder, VS Code just treats it as a project. So I'm just going to open my terminal again. If you're using VS Code, you can toggle the terminal with Control backtick, and that those two keys are right next to each other. So you can easily just toggle them. Great way of very quickly getting at your terminal. So let's have a quick browse round. You've got this node modules folder. You'll pretty much not need to spend any time in that. Your packages folder, you can see here's the Mars theme is in your packages folder. It's the only package we've got. You've got a build folder. We're not going to be spending any time in that. And then you've got your package JSON. But the one I want you to look at now is frontity.settings.js. This is the configuration file for all the Frontity packages that you're using. So we can see we're setting some properties on our state here. And we've got a packages array. There's our Mars theme, our default theme, WP source, which is responsible for fetching the data from WordPress. And there's a couple of other packages with no configuration, HTML to React and Tiny Router. So let's have a look at this one here. So go down to line 45 of frontity.settings.js. This is the line that we're going to change, the source of the API, which is basically the Frontity site that we're going to fetch data from. I want you to change that to, instead of test.frontity.org, which is where we're getting all this content from at the moment, go to jsnation2020.frontity.org. So change test.frontity.org to jsnation2020.frontity.org on line 48 there. Keep the WP JSON part that's needed because that is the root of the WordPress REST API. Save that file and then run npx frontity dev again. Now it's probably going to open it up in my other browser, so you guys can just run npx frontity dev. I'm just going to add a flag here because I don't want it to open in another browser. But you don't need to do that. You don't need to add the flag. Just run npx frontity dev. And then if I refresh this, then we can see we're getting the content changes. We're getting content from completely different content from a different site. And you'll find that the menu just leads to 404s because, of course, those links are now broken because we're getting content from a different source. So as I said, this content is coming from the WordPress theme unit test, which gives you lots of standard content that you would get on a WordPress site with a lot of edge cases. Like I think on this front page, no, we haven't got it on this front page, and we haven't got any navigation to go to. Oh, hold on, we can go to older posts. Yeah, so you can see, markup with special characters. There is one. I think it's probably right near the end. So so you've got pages with embedded video. So it's great for fully. You've got one here with a really long title. So in this case, our theme, the Mars theme, isn't handling long titles very well because that long title is overhanging the max width of the page and is causing a horizontal scroll. So this is one of the things you'd use for you'd use to test your site, that it handles these edge cases and fixes it. But we're not too concerned about the actual content. This is just useful content that you can use for developing a theme, and that's why I have put it on this site for testing, for developing this theme. Right. So next thing to do is we are going to, now we've got a working site and we're accessing data on our test site, we're going to start creating our theme. So once again, we need to Control-C out of that. And so we're still within your project folder. So in my case, JS Nation-Frontity. We're going to use npx again to just run this one time. Frontity. This time we're going to create a package. Let me just widen that a bit so we get it all on one line. Create package. And we're going to create a theme. So let's call this JS Nation theme. You can call it whatever you want, but if you want to follow along precisely, call it JS Nation theme and press enter. You need to select a namespace. It defaults to theme, so just press enter there because we're creating a theme, so that's what we want to use. And now, once that's finished, you'll find in packages that you now have the Mars theme that we had before and a new folder, the JS Nation theme. And whereas Mars theme, you can see we've got lots of stuff here. You'll see that the JS Nation theme is pretty minimal. It's just got an index.js. So it's in this folder, the JS Nation theme folder. This is where we'll be doing most of our work to build the theme. So the first thing to do is in Frontity settings.js, which hopefully you've still got open. If not, open it again. Is from packages, remove Mars theme. So you want to remove lines 11 to 43. Just delete that. And then replace it with a new object, which is just going to have one property, the name JS Nation theme. So save that file and then run that's the one I want. Run npx frontity dev again. I'm going to use that flag again because I don't want it opening up in my other window. But you just need to run npx frontity dev. Give it a few seconds for the compilation to happen. And then over in the browser, refresh the page. And if you can see this on your screen, then everything is working fine. That's exactly what we expect. Okay, somebody is getting a 404 on all pages. Yeah, the address in Frontity.settings.js, you just point to JS Nation 2020.frontity.org/wp-json. You don't use the wp-/v2. So take that out and just have what I've got here. That's all you need in your Frontity.js settings.json. So this is, as I said, this is what you can expect to see. Where is this coming from? Of course, it's coming from, oops, we don't want Mars theme. It's coming from index.js. So you can see we've got a root component returning that exact text that you can see over here. So let's change that. Let's just get that to return an H1 containing the text Frontity workshop, because I'm super creative. Save that, and in your browser, it should update automatically. Whenever you make a change to a file within the SRC folder, that'll your browser should update automatically. So you don't need to keep going into your browser and refreshing. As you can see, you know, if I add a load of exclamation marks, save the file, they'll just appear in the browser. If I take them out and save, right, let's move this component into its own file now. So under the SRC folder here, create a new folder. Now you can call this whatever you want. Because we're working traditionally with React, you'd call it components. You can call it that if you want. I'm going to call it theme files, just so it's absolutely clear that we're working in a theme. So again, call it what you want. If you're more experienced, use components or whatever you prefer. If you're fairly new to this stuff, I suggest you follow along exactly and call it theme files. And then within theme files, we're going to create a new file called index.js. Now, I think we can close frontity.settings.js. I don't think we're going to need it again, but if we do, we might only need it once or twice. We can just reopen it. So let's clear a bit of clutter and close that for now. So in index.js, this, by the way, we've got two index.js. The one with at the root of the theme in SRC, and then one within our theme files. This one's going to contain our root component. So we're going to refer to this as the root component file. So we need to import React from React. What we can do is we can cut that from there and put that in here. Oh, and over here, did I just stop sharing my screen? I think I did, didn't I? Sorry, it did that by mistake. Okay, hopefully it's back. Let me just move that. It's because I was working with this tab. I ended up clicking the stop share button by mistake. Instead of importing React here, we need to import root from /theme files. or whatever you've called that folder if you've called it something different. But I suggest, you know, to follow along exactly if you want everything to work. And then index.js, if we export default root, now if we save that, actually tell you what, let's just add, I don't know, let's just add 1, 2, 3 on the end, just so it changes in the browser. So save that. And then when we save this one, you should see it, everything's still working. And if you've changed the H1 content, you should see that change as we see it here. So if I now remove that 1, 2, 3 and save again, so we can see everything's working. So we're creating a root element, a root component here with an H that returns an H1. We're exporting that as the default export. And then we're importing root from, in the root level index.js, we're importing that from theme files. But apart from that, you can leave this index.js pretty much as is. And we're not going to need that one for quite a while now. We'll pretty much be doing everything for the time being within the theme files folder. Isn't Michael using a different URL? Yes, I'm using jsnation2020.frontity.org. So if you want to get the, let me just reopen the Frontity settings.js. Looks like some people are having some problems. This is what you need as the address: https://jsnation2020.frontity.org/wp-json should be your address. To be honest, everything will still work with test.frontity.org. Or if you've got your own WordPress site, feel free to use that, whether it's a self-hosted WordPress.org site or a WordPress.com site. But one reason to use the site I set up, JS Nation 2020, is it's got a lot of content, and when we come to paginate content later on in this workshop, we've got enough content there. If you've set up a demo WordPress site and you've only got 3 or 4 posts, then the pagination stuff that we're going to do later on, there's just not going to be sufficient content for it. So what else is coming up in Discord? Quite a few people getting 404. Right, Juanma's sort of helping out, which is great. And Michal's helping. Awesome, awesome. Fab. Hopefully Juanma and Michal are taking care of you in the Discord. It's kind of tricky to deliver the content, go through my notes, and read Discord all at the same time. Okay, so hopefully everyone is. Can you show the index.js in the root folder, please? Right, okay, bear with me. That the one. Yep, what you're seeing there looks pretty good. Okay, and just for reference, on frontity.settings.js, that's what your frontity.settings.js should look like. Okay, just give people a few moments to check that. Okay, as I say, we're not going to need frontity.settings.js really in this tutorial now that we've done that. So I'm going to close that just to get clear a bit of clutter from my my tab bar there. Right, we're going to connect the root component to the Frontity state now. So we're going to be working in this file, the root component file. Like I said, we're not going to need this file for a while now. So if everything's working, you can disregard this file for the time being until much later on in this tutorial. How are we doing for time? Gosh, we're nearly an hour in already. Right, maybe I should up the pace a bit. Let me know if you just pop in Discord, is the pace okay for you? Is it too slow? Is it too quick? While you're doing that, I will show you how to connect the state to your component. So the first thing we need to do is import connect from, oops, hit the caps lock by accident, from Frontity. Then we need to pass state into the component. By importing connect, you get access to state, you get access to actions that you can then use within your components. For now, we're just going to use the state. But we also need to connect, so we need to pass state into the root component, but we also need to connect or rather pass root into connect in order to get state passed in. So you need to add three things in this file. You need to import connect from Frontity. You need to pass state in as an argument to the root component. And you just use this destructuring syntax. And then you need to change the export default to pass root, the root component, to the connect that you imported above. Now, if you save that, nothing should change over here. Oops, that's because I went to a different URL earlier. But if you put something in here, I don't know, like test or hello Frontity. Sorry, I've just missed off a step that would make a difference here. Let's add a P in to our root component, and we're going to show the current URL. What? So state.router.link. Don't worry, later on I will be showing you where this comes from. For the time being, just create a new paragraph and pass in state.router.link there. Now if I save that, you can see because I'm on the Hello Frontity URL, it shows what the current URL is. If I put in my name is Michael, that gets updated. Because whatever the URL is gets stored in state.router.link. So we're pulling that in and rendering it within our component. So whatever you type in here changes the value of state.router.link. So I'm going to go back to the root, and you'll see we just get the root slash. Okay, so instead of manually putting things in, let's create a simple menu. Let's create a new file within your theme files folder. Let's call that link.js. And we need to import React from React. And we import connect from Frontity. We'll be doing this a lot. And let's create a link component. And just so we don't forget, we need to export default connect with the link component passed in. Okay, into the link, we're going to use a destructuring, object destructuring again. We're going to get href. Remember, actions I mentioned earlier gets passed from connect, and children, children, not children's as well. And we're going to return a div, which is kind of our wrapper, and then an A, and the children get passed in as the text of the anchor element. We'll see where that comes from shortly. Then the href of the anchor element is going to be the href that's getting passed in here. But on click, we don't want it to act as a standard anchor element. So on click, we're going to call a function we're going to prevent the default action, and then actions.router.set href. So you've got an anchor element, href is being passed in, or the href value is being passed in, and on click, we're capturing the event, preventing default, and using an action to set the value of link to the href that is passed in. So save that. Then in index.js, let us just create a little menu. So we'll create a nav element as a wrapper. And before we forget, we need to import link from /link, and then we can use it. And we'll pass it, the href will be a prop. So that'll be the root, Let's call that home. Let's just copy that down. Then in here, that'll be page 2, which is kind of a standard route on the WordPress REST API. Let's call that one more posts. And this one we're going to have as Lorem Ipsum, because there's a page full of Lorem Ipsum. So what happens here is we're using the link component, but we're passing a prop, an href prop. And of course, the link takes some embedded text there. Those are the children of the link. So anything embedded within the component is the children. So that's what's getting passed here. That's the children. So that Lorem Ipsum gets passed to there, to children, and then gets rendered in the returned div and anchor. And the href gets passed as a prop and is used as the href attribute, the value of the href attribute. So if we save that, oh, yikes, what's happened here? Right, what have I done wrong? Let me just have a quick scan and see what I've done wrong here. Import connect from Frontity, href actions children. Ah, yes, I don't need to destructure that, do I? There we go. That was what I did wrong. Okay, so now our menu appears, and if we click that, then the address changes in the URL changes, and what is displayed here also changes as I navigate the site. Okay, I did ask what people thought of the pace, and I didn't actually go in and check what people were saying in Discord. Nope, doesn't look like anybody has said anything about the pace. Okay, so Jeremy says the pace is fine. Mukesh says the pace is fine. Stevie, a bit slow for me. Sorry about that, guys. Stevie, pace is fine. Okay, great. Most people seem to be happy with the pace. I guess, Stevie, if you're a bit more advanced, bear with us. I obviously can't cater for all levels. Most people seem to think it's fine, which is, so that's great. Okay, cool. So hopefully you're seeing what I'm seeing and everything is working fine. So let's get a better understanding of what's going on here. So let's move the text editor out the way here and focus instead on the browser. So open up the dev tools. Presumably those are the earlier errors. So let me clear those out the way. If you type in Frontity, Frontity.state, And let's have a look at what we've got. So Frontity uses ES6 proxies, so you don't get everything directly under state. You need to go into this the target proxy here. And if you look under Frontity, you can see some of the things that we had in frontity.settings.js at the top, you know, the title, the description. There's the title, there's the description, and so on. Not terribly interesting, that, to be honest. Router, now here's where your state.router.link is. So if I go into one of the others, like, let's go to lorem ipsum and call frontity.state again. And now you can see the link is lorem ipsum. Source is where you'll spend most of your time looking at stuff. Okay, so on lorem ipsum, if we just do a Command R, Control R, whatever. Oh, yikes. Okay, what's happened there? Internal server error. Why am I getting that? Export link was not found in link. Oh, that was the earlier error, right? Cannot read property split of undefined. Why are we getting that? On the link, lorem ipsum is missing the... Nope, that's not it. Ah, I've got some weird address here, that's why. Not sure what happened there. Okay, go to lorem ipsum, post, yeah, okay. Right, everything's working, right. Okay, for some reason I had a weird address there. I didn't see what happened there to cause that. So let's just refresh the page. So yeah, go to lorem ipsum, refresh your page. Hopefully you won't get the error that I did. If you did, then it could well be that link was with the, I'd missed the slash off the beginning of that link. So if you were following me exactly, but hopefully you spotted that before I did. So if we now once again go to frontity.state in our console, again go into the proxy, the target proxy. So we've looked at the router and seen that we've got lorem ipsum there as the link. If we're going to source.data, this is where the information for each of our URLs is stored. So if you look at the lorem ipsum object here, and you can see it's got an ID of 146. That is the ID of that page on WordPress. You can see is page is true. Is post type is true, because in WordPress, pretty much everything is is a post. So a post is a post, a page is a post, even a menu is a post, media attachment is a post. Pretty much everything is a post in WordPress. So that's just part of the terminology of WordPress. In actual fact, this is a page. Or strictly speaking, it's a post of type page. But to all intents and purposes, we will treat it as a page as distinct from a post. And we can see the root as well. So knowing that it's a page, so we can see here it's of type page. Knowing that it's of type page and knowing its ID, we can now go down to the page and the ID 146, and now we can get the actual content of the page. Now we're not actually rendering this yet, we will come on to that. The date it was published, there's the ID, there's the title, the content, the excerpt, and the author ID as well. And if you look up here, you've got an object with the author as well, so you can get the author's name if necessary. So as you navigate from one URL to other, the Frontity/WP source package automatically fetches everything you need in the background and stores it in state.source. So, so in this object here. Okay, what I want you to do now is open the Network tab. You don't need to be using Chrome, you can be using Firefox. Just use a browser that's got some decent dev tools. So not Internet Explorer or Edge. Now, if we click on the home, you'll see that a network request is made to home. Then if we go back to the console, let's clear it and call Frontity.state again and look in source.data, you see we've got an awful lot more content. So as well as the lorem ipsum page that we had earlier with ID 146, which you'll recall, we've also got some posts. Some items of type post. And so, so we've got type post ID 1785. If we scroll down, we go to post 1785, and there's all the content. So the content, the excerpt, the title, the author, the date, and so on. WordPress stores content as HTML. So, and WordPress REST API delivers that content as HTML. So the content usually has a rendered property that we use to instead of directly accessing the HTML, which I don't think you can anyway. You need to use this rendered property. Yeah, so, and if you go back up here to data and select the root element, you'll see there's now a list of items. Again, it's been proxied. And you can see you've got an array of 10 posts, which are the 10 posts that would appear on your home page and that will appear when we carry on developing this theme. So if you look at the this root element under data, you can see it's got some properties that are quite interesting, like is home. So you can identify this as the home page, whereas the lorem ipsum doesn't have the is home property. That isn't the home page. Home page is defined in your WordPress admin pages. You can define whatever page you like to be your home page. With a clean WordPress install, it'll default to your posts archive, but or your list of posts. But you can change it in the WordPress admin to be any page you like. So I could go into the WordPress admin and change the home page to be the lorem ipsum page, and then lorem ipsum would have the is home property, and that one wouldn't. So feel free to have a little bit of, in your console, frontity.state, feel free to spend a minute or so just having a browse around and seeing the connection between the data object and how you can use that to access the different kinds of items, whether they're posts or pages, noting that whatever you access under data will have a type of page or post. And so you then need to go, if it's a post, it will be in the post object. If it's a page, it's going to be in the page object, and you access them by the ID within those objects, which you get from the ID in the data object. So have a browse around, spend a minute or so looking at that, and get your head around it. And then we will move on. We're coming. I'm just going to take a couple of minutes while people are still making coffee or feeding the cat or whatever they're doing, just to look at a couple of questions. I've noticed some people are have sent me private messages in the chat. No, my mistake. That's from Wanma. I didn't see that. Sorry. Can you show again the WP REST API URL you're using for this project? Right. Let me just share my screen again. This was some time ago, so this may no longer be relevant. But that's it there. How is he looking at the state on the console? Go to the console and type frontity.state. Yeah, somebody says on Safari it didn't work. Yeah, I suggest you use Chrome or Firefox, something with some decent dev tools. Okay, somebody asking how do I make my code render what we are writing, but that looks like it's been answered, and yeah, there's a thumbs up, so it looks like they're that person was happy. And there's the votes for the break. Yeah. Okay, are we all back? I'm pretty sure that was 5 minutes. So let's carry on. Okay, I'm going to just close the console now, because we're going to go back to doing some coding. So let's use some of that information, right? So just as a reminder, this is the URL we're using. Some people seem to have had some problems with that, and I've been asked a couple of times to just display that on my screen again. Okay, so we don't need frontity.settings.js for the time being. So in your root component file here, so we're displaying a heading, we're displaying the current URL, which we're getting from state.router.link, which, let me just open up my console again and get Frontity.state. So we're getting it from, open up the proxy. So we are getting that from state.router.link. We're getting that value. So if we change that, yeah, we're getting that, state.router.link. So let's use some of this information. So if we go to source, data, now we could see that each of these things has a number of properties. In this case, we've got isArchive is true because the root is a list of posts. So those are the 10 posts that appear on the home page. We've got the same thing on page 2. It's also an archive and has a list of posts which are different from the ones appearing on page 2 are going to be different from the ones on the home page. So let's just verify that. So blocks formatting and keyboard navigation are the first ones on page 2, whereas on page 1 it's block image and block button. So we can see that they are distinct sets of posts. And they are both archives, which is a post listing. It's kind of WordPress speak for a post listing. Whereas lorem ipsum, our other menu item, is not an archive, it's a page. So let's use some of that information. So underneath nav, let's just separate our top element from the rest of the content by putting an HR in. And then we'll put a main element in there. Right, before we do that, we're going to use data. So up here, we need to actually get that data. So let's have a const, create a variable data, state.source.get, state.router.link. So state.router.link is currently page 2, yeah. State.router.link is page 2. So state.source.get, we're getting the data for whatever the current link is. So we are getting this data here. So this is what will be stored in our data variable there. And of course, we're passing state in as a prop to the root element. So having all of this in our data object, we can now say data.isArchive. So if it's an archive, we're going to use this syntax because this will always return true. So rendering a div will always return true. So if data.isArchive is true, which in the case of page 2 is the case, if that's true, that will then render that div with that content. This is a list. So I'm just going to copy that down. If it's a post, then we'll just render that. If it's a page, we'll render that. So let's save that. And we can see because we're on page 2, this is a list. Because it's an archive, it's a post listing. The same for home. But lorem ipsum, this is a page. Because if we go to lorem ipsum, you see is page is true, is archive and is post doesn't appear. So the first one where both conditions are met, because this is always true, rendering that it will always return true. So we're only really looking at this one. It will render this is a page. Okay, so let's actually just use this to now display some of our content. So let's create a new component in theme files. And this will be, the file's called list.js. So as always, we import React from React. Well, sorry, wrong syntax there. That should be quotes, not brackets. The import, this is where we want Frontity, brackets rather, curly brackets, import connect from Frontity. And let's create a new component called list. Remember we use capitalization for components. We're going to pass in the state. You'll find we do this pretty commonly when we're developing with Frontity, because you almost always want access to the state. And we're going to return something and export. Connect function with the list component passed into it. So up here, we are going to return a wrapping div. Within which, well, we're going to use some data. So we need to get that data. So let's create a data constant up here. And again, state.source.get. So you should never access state.data directly. Always use state.source.get, which is a helper function to get this, and then you'll get everything, well formed and usable. So, and the current state of state.router.link. So whatever our current URL is. So having got that data, now, if we're using the list component, then we know we're on an archive page. If we're on an archive page, we're going to have an array of items. So let's get the cursor in the right place. Data.items.map. So we want to iterate over these. Pass the item into this function. And this function is going to return a div Why didn't that autocomplete? Don't know. Now with React, you should really, whenever you're working with arrays, always give your item, your components a key attribute. In this case, we're just going to use item.id. So, yeah. So we're iterating over this list of items. So we're going to get the ID from there. So just good practice to give a key to your elements when you're iterating over an array. I think React actually protests if you don't. Right, and then we just want to render something. So let's get the item.type, item.id, which we're using for the key as well, but let's see it on our screen, and item.link. So in the case of this one, which I sort of randomly chanced upon, we've got 1788. The link is going to be block image, and the type is post, but they're always going to be posts. You can pretty much rely on any of these items in an archive being a post. So we can save that. And then in our root component, we need to import that. Import list from list. And then we want to use it. So we're going to replace this with the list component. We'll just use a self-closing element there. Now, if it's an archive, instead of saying this is an archive or this is a list, it's actually going to list this data, the item.type, which is always be post, the item.id, and the link. So we've already saved list.js. If we save this, it's because I'm currently on a page. This is a page. If I go to the home page, and now we get that. So so I'm on the root. So which one did I randomly select? 1788, which is the first one. It's a post, yes. It's ID 1788, and the link is block image. Success. Okay, so that is interesting but not useful. So let's go back to list.js. We're going to change our list component and make that a link that you can click on to actually get to that post. So in order to make it a link, we're going to use the link component as well in list.js. So let's import link from /link. Because link just returns an anchor with an href that gets passed as a prop, and there's a function for the on-click to prevent the default and set the address. So having brought link in, we can now use it to render some actual usable links. So within this function, where we iterate over the items array with map, let's get so state.source.post item.id. So if I just go back over here, So our data contains the whatever object relates to the current address. So in this case, it's root. Data contains a list of items. We're iterating over those items. So just pick one, so 1785. And then what we're doing is we're getting, so state.source.post, the item ID. So we're using the item ID and then going to state.source.post the item ID. Which item ID did I pick? I forgot now. 1785. That one there. So we are getting all of this. This object here is going to be stored in post there. So now that we've got that, we can now return, instead of all this, a div, we're going to return a link, which we imported above. I'll just change the closing tag as well. The key is item ID. href equals post.link. So you remember all of this is stored in post, and we're getting post.link. We're getting that there. It's going to be href of our link here, passed as a prop there. So we got the a href, so that'll be a link. And then all of that can be replaced. We're not interested in all that really. We just want post.title.rendered. So we've got all of this in post, and there's title.rendered. So it's going to display block button is the title of that post. And I think that's all we need to do there. If I save that, and that works, yeah. So let's just close the console. And if I click here, you can see this is a post, which is coming from here. Because that has the isPost property. If we go click on that one, we get the same, that the URL changes, and it's a post. And the same on more posts. So we're getting pretty close to having a fully functioning site here. All we need to do now is when you click on one of these links, instead of it showing a post, it actually shows the post. And that is precisely what we are going to do next. Sorry, let me just find myself in my notes, make sure I'm in the right place. Yeah. Okay, cool. So back in our editor, in the theme files folder, let's create another file. This is going to be post.js. And all the usual stuff, import React from React. No, I've made that same mistake again, haven't I? From React. If you think it's a bit tedious typing that I'm typing all this, I'm kind of doing it just to keep the pace nice and steady, so that people can keep up. If I just copied and pasted stuff in all the time, we'd be going at a blistering pace and would end up leaving people behind, and we don't want to do that. So let's create a post component, and we'll grab state pass it as a prop by deconstructing it there. And we're going to return something. And we're going to export. Connect with the post component passed into it. So what are we going to return here? We want to actually return the content of the post. So let's have a wrapping div. We'll have an h2. Right, we haven't got any data to work with yet, so let's get some data. So our data is, as ever, going to be state.source.get. We use the helper function. We don't access the data object directly. State.router.link, so whatever the current URL is. And then our post is going to be state.source. And then we want data.type and data.id. So I should be a bit more disciplined about my semicolons. I'm very bad at that. Right, so let's just verify what we're doing here. So we're getting the data for the current link. Well, actually, we want to be on a post. So actually, let me just get that state again. So we're on this link, markup HTML tags and formatting. So we want to get that data. So for, where was it, markup HTML tags and formatting. So this is being stored in data. And then the post, we can see the type, we're using data.type and data.id. So as I demonstrated earlier, we're going to go to data.type is post and data.id was 1178. Which is surely somewhere here. There it is. So all of this is what is stored in post now. So now that we have that, we can now use post.title.rendered. So we are getting that, markup HTML tags and formatting. And let's actually get the content as well. So we'll have a div. I'm going to make this a self-closing div because we don't need to put anything inside it. Right. Now we've got the content here. Because it comes from HTML, you've got content.rendered. So we're going to use post.content.rendered. But what we want to do is set the HTML. But with React, what we should do is use dangerously set inner HTML. And then we wrap that you can look the dangerously set HTML stuff up on the React docs. It's just bad practice to use inner HTML. And again, I think React might protest about it. So when React use dangerously set inner HTML when you just want to render some HTML to the screen. So that should be it for that file. And we now just need to import that into index.js, or our root component rather. So we import post from post, and we're going to use that component down here. Again, we use that self-closing. And because everything's a post in WordPress, unless it's an archive, the page will also be a post. We'll use the post component, at least for now. So now if I save this, we should see the post content. That's your H2 there in the post component. Where is the post component? There. There's the H2, which if we look here, markup, HTML tags and formatting, and here's our content, which we can see the HTML tags in there. And now if we navigate around the site, go back to home, we have pretty much a fully functioning website getting data from the WordPress REST API of our source site. And we can even go to Lorem Ipsum, and that page gets rendered as well by virtue of this here. Now, so we're using one component for both posts and pages, but on posts, you'd normally have like author information, date information, tags and categories, stuff like that. So let's create a new component in order to display these separately. So with the post component, I can't duplicate it from here. Can I? Nope, there's not a duplicate. Let's just create a new file. Let's call it page.js. Let's get everything from post.js. So select everything in post.js, copy it, and put it in page.js. Let's change the component to be a page. So we need to export or pass a page to the connect object that we're exporting, or function that we're exporting. And we may as well change this to page as well. And that is pretty much all we need to do here. We now have a separate page component, but in our post component, we're going to do something a little bit different, because in post, so our pages, because it's pretty much identical to post, that's going to just render as it does at the moment. But in posts, we want to display author and date information. So let's open up that console again. Okay, I haven't got time to address those errors. They're not showstoppers, so I'm just going to ignore those. So if we go to the post object and just pick any post at random, you'll see it's got a date property, and it's also got an author property, which and you get the author ID. And then further up, you've got author there, and you can see two authors. The one that we're interested in there was the author ID with the ID of 2. So let's get that. So const author. So this is in your post component, as distinct from your page.js, equals state.source.author. So we're getting something from here. Whatever matches post.author. And now we can use that in here. So let's create another P. Whoops, autocomplete. Let's create a P tag there. Let's just make this stand out. So posted on post.date. So post.date there. And let's do another P. Again, make this stand out with a strong. And then the author is going to be author.name. So whichever author ID is associated with that post, it will get that author and pull the name out. In this case, that's Theme Buster. So we're on a post already. Let's just close the console. If I save that, now we can see posted and author shows up on a post. I've forgotten this step, haven't I? And it is showing up on a page, because what we now need to do, of course, is import page into our root component. And if it's a page, get it to render a page instead of a post. And it's all gone blank. Why is that? What have I done wrong? Page.content.rendered, somebody is saying. Yes, you're absolutely right. Yes, because I changed that to page to make it make more sense to distinguish the page from the post, because it makes more sense to call it page when you're using on the page component, but I forgot to change the content. Apologies for that, and then it comes back. So we see our page doesn't have the author and date info, but if we go to a post, then it does. Of course, the date info isn't very pretty at the moment, but we're not going to fix that in this tutorial. You can use something like moment.js to render nice, pretty dates. Great, so we have now a fully functioning website with archives or post listings, posts showing the date and the author, and pages, which render slightly differently from posts. So, looking good in terms of functionality, not looking so good in terms of styling and appearance. So how are we doing for time? Got about another hour to go. Right, let's crack on. Let's do some styling then. Frontity uses CSS in JavaScript for styling. In particular, it uses Emotion, which is a CSS in JS library. Won't go too deeply into that, apart from let's just start using it. So the first thing we need to do is, well, there's three things that we're going to use. We're going to use global styling, we're going to use a CSS function, and we're going to use the styled function. If you've used CSS in JS before, you might be familiar with them. If not, we'll just see how to use it with in action, really. So go to index. Your root component. So this file here, the one that's doing all the work. Now, because emotion is bundled with Frontity, we don't need to do anything here apart from import global and CSS from Frontity. These two, well, CSS is a function, global is an object, I think, which will allow us to do some CSS in JS. And we're importing them from Frontity because, as I said, emotion comes bundled with Frontity. It's already included. So you don't need to import them from emotion. You import them from Frontity because Frontity is already exporting them for you. So down here, above the heading, let us create some global styles. And let's do something really simple. So let's create a self-closing global element. Give it a styles attribute, and styles is going to take the CSS function. Remember I said CSS is a function, but it takes its attribute, or CSS takes its argument, the CSS function takes its argument using this weird backticks syntax. And within that backticks, that template literal, you can type whatever CSS you want. So in this case, we're going to select the HTML DOM element and globally make the font family sans serif. Yep, so we're using the global attribute, or it's not a function. I think it's an object. Not sure. Oh no, it says it's a function. It is a function. Okay, and CSS is a function. We're taking this argument with this literal string literal containing HTML. If we save that, everything should change to a sans serif font. Okay, next thing to do is we're going to create some CSS components. This is where we get into the real action of CSS in JS. So at the bottom of your file here, you can put it anywhere, but I'm going to put it at the bottom here. I'm kind of following my lead from how they've done it in Mars theme and putting the CSS components at the bottom of my file. So create a const. Let's create a header component, and it's going to be a styled header. Header is a valid CSS element. We need to import styled up here, which is also a function exported by emotion, but Frontity exports it on our behalf, so we import it from Frontity. And again, styled also takes this backtick syntax for its arguments. So the header component is going to be a styled header element. And let's just give it a background color of light gray. How's that? But we need to use that. So we created the component, we need to use it. So let's look at our markup here. this is our main. This is our content down here. Basically, everything above the HR is what we want to be in our header. So let's all wrap that. So inside the header component. So let me indent all of that. Put the closing tag down here. We don't need the HR anymore because having the light gray background on the header is going to separate out the header from the main content. Now, if we save that, we get a nice light gray background on our header. Okay, still not looking great, but making progress. So let's carry on with styling this. So as you can see, we've got a pretty ugly sort of white border around our heading. What we really want is for it to be nicely buttered up against the edges of our browser window. So one thing that I like to do is I like to do a basic kind of reset, CSS reset. We're going to do this here in the global. It's a very simple reset. We're going to, every element, so use a star, is going to have 0 padding, 0 margin, and our box sizing will be border box. If we save that, we lose all our margins and borders, so you can now see our header is nicely tucked in against the edges of the browser window. And by doing this very simple reset, it gives us a little bit more control over what we do when we start adding margins and padding. Things will be a bit more predictable. Though admittedly, it's not looking great at the moment, but we'll go on and fix that. So let's go back to our header component and let's carry on styling that. Let's give it a, just going to add a border on the bottom. If I save that, we get a nice fat border in maroon. A couple of other things we want to do is we want to constrain our page width to, we're going to go for 800 px because we don't want this to just infinitely expand. So what we need to do is we're going to add another component, a kind of an inner component. So we're going to call this header content. This is going to be a styled div. Again, we use this backtick syntax for the argument. And the max width is going to be 800 pixels. Give it some padding, 1 EM. And margin auto, so with the max width, it'll always be centered on the page. Oops, no, we don't want, we actually want 2 EM at the top and bottom and 1 EM on the sides for padding. So let's save that. Oh, that's not going to do anything because we now have to put our header content attribute component here. Let's indent all of that. Save that. And now we've got the header with a full width header with the light gray background and the bottom border, but we've got our header content constrained to 800 px and centered. So that's looking a bit nicer now, isn't it? But our content area is looking a bit less great. Let's create a new component, main. That is going to be a styled.main. So main, again, is a standard HTML element. So of course, look out for your case here. You know, so it's because it's a component, we use capital M. For the element, it's a lowercase m. So what's happening here is that the header component gets replaced with a header element with this styling. And likewise here, the header content component effectively gets, or the content rendered in the header component is going to be a div with this styling. And the same here. Main will return a main element with this styling and whatever content is within it. So again, we want max width to be 800 pixels. Padding, let's just go for 1 EM this time. And margin, auto. If we save that, we haven't used main. That's why nothing's happened. All we've got to do here is just replace the main element with the main component. So it's just a simple case of changing the lowercase m's to a capital M. Save that. And you can see that padding appears. And if we expand that, you can see it's constrained to the 800 px. So things are starting to look a little bit nicer now. But we can go further. We can use a SAS, kind of a SAS-like syntax to get subcomponents within main. So if there's an image, which there is on the page we're currently looking at, let's set a max width of 100%. H2s. And remember, we are going to have H2s because we're going to post some pages, get rendered within main, and they have an H2 element in them. So the H2 elements will give a margin of 0.5 EM top and bottom and nothing left and right. And then any Ps or paragraphs within the main component. Let's spread things out a bit to make things more readable for paragraphs, 1.25 EM. And we want to separate the paragraphs out. So margin bottom, 0.75 EM. If we save that, those styles get applied. So where there's a P, that gets, those styles get applied to a P within the main element there. So this is where the WordPress theme unit test, which is the content we're using here, will really come into its own, because now you can start adding styles here to ensure that all the unit tests for the theme are met. So we can't access that one with the really long header at the moment until we do our pagination, but you'll recall we saw that earlier in the workshop. If that is still extending, beyond the width of our content, we can apply styles here to make sure that it fits, that it behaves properly. So we can use the theme unit test content to add styles here within main and make sure everything gets rendered the way we want it to. Okay, so far so good. So let us turn our attention back to the header, because things are looking better, but our nav is not looking so good. So actually, I'm not going to put it down there. I'm going to put it here because it's part of the header content. So we've got header, the header content, which is our constrained part of the header. And then I'm going to create a new const menu, which is going to be a styled nav. Now, nav is an HTML element, and which we're using up here. So when we use the menu component, it'll effectively render a nav. So it'll render pretty much what we've got here, but with the styling that we're going to add here applied. So for our nav, we're going to display flex. Flex direction is row, and margin top 1 EM. So it's not hard up against the content above it. And then any divs within that, the main, because remember, let me just widen this up. Remember, the link returns a div. So any divs within the menu element, we're going to style. Well, actually, let's not do that. Let me just stop that. Let's see what problem we're solving by doing that. So we've got a menu there, and we want it to render a nav. So we're going to use this component up here. The closing one. Save that, and we get a bit of a margin at the top now, but all our menu are hard up against each other. Not great for legibility or usability. And this is why I was doing what we're doing here, where any divs contained within the menu element, and because it's got link components and link component returns a div, that means divs are rendered here. So any divs within that will have a margin right of 1 EM. Save that, and they get nicely separated out, and we can actually navigate around and see our post listings, our posts, and our pages. Right, how are we doing for time? We've got a little over half an hour left. I'm hoping to leave some time for questions. Can grid layout be used in Frontity? Yes, any CSS can be used well, not necessarily in Frontity, but in CSS in JS, you can use any CSS using this syntax. You create a component that returns a styled element, having imported styled, and it will return that component with that styling. So in this case, we're returning a div. This case, with that styling, we're returning a nav with this styling. So we've done all our styling within our root component at the moment. But you don't have to do your styling in the root component. You can style any component. So let's go to our list component. So open up list.js. Let's put a bit of styling here. Now, the list component basically has a list of items. So let's call our new component items. This is going to be a styled div. Again, we use this template literal syntax. And we're going to replace that div because that div is going to be returned by using the items component, and make sure we do the closing tag as well. Those will still work but everything still looks the same until we add some styling here. Now list uses the link component, and the link component returns a div. So what we're going to do here, we're not going to directly style list, but we're going to style any divs within the items component. So all divs within the items component are going to have a margin of 12px, top and bottom, and let's increase the font size. Whoops, get my typing fingers working, to 1.2 EM. Now if we save that, though, this list of posts here will get larger with more space between them. Let's see what happens. Oops, that did not happen. Why did that not happen? That's because I didn't import styled. Remember to do that. We need to import styled from Frontity. And now, yay, now it works. Cool, like I said, you can style any component. So let's actually do our link component instead of this kind of ugly default blue and purple for visited links, which goes back to like 1992 or the dawn of the internet. Let us make things look a little bit prettier by styling our actual links. So again, before I forget, because I forgot last time, we need to import styled from Frontity. And we're going to create a new component. Let's call it anchor, which is going to be a styled A. So what we do instead, so we can remove the A and replace it with the anchor component. And remember to do the closing one. So again, everything will still work, but nothing will change because we haven't put any styling in there yet. Let's just make the color. We'll use one of the HTML named colors. Text decoration, none. Get rid of those ugly underlines. Now all of those will change. The underlines will go and they'll change to a pleasant steel blue color, but so will these, because we're applying these stylings directly to the link component, and the link component is also used in the header menu as well as in the list. We're styling them all in one fell swoop. So as soon as I save the link component, everything starts looking much classier, yeah? Okay, now the final thing I want to do is if we go to post.js, the date and author aren't really standing out. I'm just going to do this really quickly. You know the score by now. So just to get this looking nice and so we can move on quite quickly, I'm going to create a post info component, which is going to be a styled div. And remember to import styled up here. Use the backticks for the argument. And I'm just going to tell you what, to save time. No, actually, I'm going to save a bit of time by copying all the styles, because we do need to move on. But I'm also aware that it's not going to give you much time to type this in. So we've got a post info component which returns a div, and so we're going to wrap this. Well, what is the post info, the date and the author, in that component. So let's just indent that so everything looks nice and neat. If I save that, you see those styles get applied to the post there. So we don't have that on pages, and then any post we go to will have the post information, the author, and the date in this rather ugly format. But like I said, we're not formatting dates in this tutorial. We're pressed enough for time as it is. Okay, I'll just leave that on there for those of you that want to copy that styling. But of course, you can apply your own styling there. But I'll just give you 30 seconds or so to copy as much as you can, because I realized you just copied and pasted that in. While you're doing that, I'll just quickly look at my notes and see what we're going to do next. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some dynamic styling. Martix has helpfully posted the styles into Discord, so you can copy and paste it from there. Thanks, Martix. Good job. Actually, I should have thought to do that, shouldn't I? I'm just focusing on the content I'm delivering and not really thinking about things like Discord, which is why we've got Michal and Juanma helping out. So they can address all that. Okay, so things are looking pretty good. Let's start adding some dynamic styles. So CSS in JS is all well and good insofar as we've used it, but it doesn't really add anything that we couldn't do with CSS and or SAS or SCSS. So let's actually do something where we're actually more interesting with CSS in JS and add some dynamic styles. So you'll remember that we could get the isPostType property when we got the data. So let's go back to index, our root component. And in our header, where we've got our bottom border, let us pass a prop to header. And we are going to get, so if it's a post type, so we're going to pass an isPostType prop, and we're going to get data is post type. Now you'll remember from here that if we're on a post, so we go to source.data, if we're on a post, it has an isPostType property. No, it's not there. Why can't I find the isPostType property? what am I doing? Oh, right, okay. Okay, well, this one has got the is post type property. Not quite sure why those ones don't at the moment, but okay, with time is pressing. Let's not worry about it. I'll figure that out later. Suffice to say that a post should have the is post type property, and in this case it does. So if it is a post type, well, we're going to pass that value across. So that'll be either true or null or undefined. But now we can use that within our header component. So we pass props in here. Because we're not in JSX anymore, which is what we're using JSX up here in the component, but we're not within here. So we have to prepend our code, our function code with the $sign. So our border color, and now you'll realize why I didn't just use the short version, you know, border bottom 8px solid maroon. Why I've actually used this longer syntax is so I can actually apply a function to the border color. So we've got to pass the props to the function. So whatever props are there, we've only got one, the is post type. So we pass them into the function, and then we'll check if the props is post type. So if it has a value of true, we will have a light sea green. We used that earlier. Otherwise, we will have the light sea green we used here. Otherwise, we will have maroon, which we've currently got. If I save that, yikes, what happens? It's that, yeah. And now it works. Now, if we're on a post, we get the green border. Likewise on a page, because if it's a page, it also has the is post type property, but it's a post of page type. But if we're on a listing, we get the maroon border because is post type will be undefined. Okay, I'm going to skip the next step where I just made pages have a different color in order to press on. So we've got about 20 minutes left. I want to show you how to use the state and actions now. This is a slightly contrived example, but we're just going to show and hide the menu and use some state to do that. So we now need to go to not our root component, but the JS, index.js, this one here, not the one in themes files, which is our root component. We want to go to this one. So the one that imports root from theme files. This is where we're defining our state and actions. Now here, we're going to set an is menu open in the theme, and we're going to set that to false. Let's make that a little bit prettier by putting it on its own line so it looks a bit more like standard object syntax. Okay, and then we're also going to add 2 actions on the theme. One to open the menu. This is going to be a function that takes a state state.theme.is menu open equals true. So to open the menu, we're going to set that property to true. And we're going to have another almost identical function called that will close the menu. So we'll call it close menu. That sets that to false. So save that, and not much is happening at the moment. So in our root component, where we have the menu, we're going to check for state.theme.is menu open. So the value of this property here. So we can add whatever properties we want to the state, and likewise whatever functions we want to actions. So we're going to check for that value. If it's true, we're going to return something. Otherwise, we'll return nothing for now. And what we're going to return, if it's true, is all that. So I'm just going to copy and paste that into there. Just get my indentation looking a bit neater. And now, because that's false, if I save that, the menu will disappear. But if I change that to true and refresh, it comes back. So let's set that, put that back to false, refresh that so it disappears, and let's dynamically change that value using these functions that we've already added to actions. This, by the way, is the proper way to update state. Never sort of address change this property directly. Always create action functions in order to change the state. Okay, so in order to do that dynamically, we just need a couple of things. We need to add a button to show and hide it. Well, we need a couple of buttons. One button's going to go here. Then on click is actions, autocomplete, actions.theme.close menu. So we're going to call this function here if the menu is already open. And that button will have the close in there. But because we've now got a menu element or a menu component and a button, we need a wrapper. So we can just use an empty component and close it, empty element and close it there. And then here, instead of null, where I'll just crib this, copy and paste this down. Whoops. And this is going to call open menu, and it's going to say open. So let's save that. Oh, and what have I done wrong? What has gone wrong here? Okay, let's take. I'm not immediately seeing what I've done wrong. Let's change that back to no. Yes, well spotted, Martix. Again, yes, I need to pass actions. I'm using an action, so I need to pass actions. I actually made the same mistake last week on Friday when I was running through it to test my my tutorial, and I made the exact same mistake and forgot to put actions in, and done it again. There you go. Anyway, thanks, Martix, for pointing that out. Right, so now we have an open button. If we click it, it shows the menu because it's calling open menu, and then now this button is being rendered along with the menu, and if I close it, that we call the close menu function, and now this button is being rendered because of the value of state.theme.isMenuOpen. Okay, so how are we doing for time? What I was going to do next was I was going to style those buttons because they look pretty ugly. And I was going to also add some pagination. I'm going to skip those steps. I mean, because it's just more styling. We've covered styling. You can figure that out, I am sure. If not, this tutorial is going to be available for you to go through, and the missing steps you'll be able to fill in just by going through this tutorial. I'm going to give you the URL to go to the repo at the end. We've only got about 10 minutes. So one last thing I want to show you is for SEO. So like I said, I want to leave a bit of question. Let's import something else from Frontity, head. This will allow us to add head elements to our document. So again, for time, because of the time, I'm just going to do this quickly. We'll add a head component here, and we can do that because we've got it from here. And I'm not going to add a lot here. I'm just going to add, well, let's just open this up. Let's go to elements. And if we look in head, we have a title because, you know, a title is being rendered, but it's empty. But we can add a title element here. Let's call it, what should we put in here? Just Frontity workshop at JS Nation Live. Save that. And now you see we actually have a title there. And we could also put in a, I don't know, meta name equals description, content equals, I don't know, blah, blah, blah for now. Save that. Whoops. Didn't close the tag. And then somewhere here, we should have, there's our title. You can see how emotion is adding the, let me just expand this out a bit. You can see how emotion is adding the styling in that we've defined in various places. And where is our meta description? I can, oh, I'm not seeing it. No, it's not showing up for some reason. Let's refresh that. Head. Title. Our meta description isn't showing up. Okay, let's have I done something silly here? Let's try and make that a self-closing tag instead. See if that makes a difference. Can't imagine that it would. No, weird. I don't know why it's not showing up, or maybe I'm just not seeing it. Okay, let me go back to here. Okay, I'm going to do some we'll go through any Q&As shortly. Let me just run some slides here. Here's the address of the project tutorial. This is the repo, and I am going to copy and paste these into the discourse. So you can just click them or just grab them from there. So that's got the full tutorial, basically the script I've been following. So you can run through it again, and the missing steps that we had to omit because of time pressures, you can cover those. Frontity website is here. Okay, sorry. Let me just let me go through in order here. In association with this conference, so I'm starting to rush a little bit now. In association with this conference, we're running a competition. Let me put the competition link up for you. The competition, I think the closing date is the 3rd of July. The rules are here. I'm just posting that for you. Right, competition. That's a tutorial. That's the competition. Oh, it's a bit twitchy, this. Right, yeah. So 2 winners will each receive a 1-hour consultation session. You can submit any project that you've built with Frontity, whether it's a personal project, a published project. Well, it needs to be published in some form, or at least have a repo for us to judge it. 2 people will win a 1-hour consultation with a member of the team. Everyone who enters gets a swag bag. You know, I think it's got its T-shirt, sticker pack. I'm not quite sure exactly what's in the swag bag. Yeah, and there's the closing date. Enter by the 3rd of July. I'm just posting the link now in Discourse where you can enter the competition. Right, I've already posted the link to the Frontity website. So our documentation is at docs.frontity.org. We have a community forum where you can ask any questions you want, and the team will help you out, as well as the rest of the community. There's the community. And if you're mentioning Frontity on Twitter, please use our Twitter tag. So I'm going to stop sharing now. And if Michal and Juanma would like to come back on stream, to unmute and open up their video. Then maybe we can do a quick Q&A in the last 5 or 6 minutes. Hi, Michal. Can we hear you?
Hi, Michael.
Ah, yes, we can hear you. Excellent.
Great.
And Juanma, are you online?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Okay. We just got your gravatar at the moment, but that's fine. Okay, guys, is there any questions? To be honest, I've been so focused on the content, I haven't barely looked at the discourse or at the chat. But has anything come up in those in either of those places that you want to address?
I think so. There has been some questions that I think both Juan and me, we've been more or less following the people asking questions.
Awesome.
I don't think there was anything in particular that like needed immediate attention. Yeah, and yeah, thanks for the workshop. Great job, Michael.
Thank you. Yeah, I run up against time pressures in the end, but no, thank you for helping out and for dealing with all the text chat which just would have diverted my attention way too much.
I see. Yeah, sorry. I just see that people have started asking some more questions now, so maybe we can
sure,
take
but give
some
us your
of them.
questions, guys. We've only got a few minutes, though.
There is an interesting one about is integration with advanced custom fields relatively easy?
To be honest, I haven't done much with advanced custom fields. Quite honestly, even with WordPress, I don't really use advanced custom fields. I don't really use the plugin. I tend to code up my own PHP if I need custom post types or custom fields. So I haven't really used advanced custom fields either as, you know, even as a WordPress developer, let alone with Frontity. But I think there's stuff on our in our community forum about it. I think there's quite a bit of stuff in the community forum. So hop onto our community forum. The link has disappeared off the top there, but it's still there. And just search for advanced custom fields in the search field. And I'm sure you'll get loads of posts. So I don't know if you've got anything to add, Juanma, any insights that you want to share on that.
Well, I would say that as a general rule with Frontity, everything that can be shared in the REST API can be consumed by Frontity. So as long as you are able to put that data, custom post types, advanced custom fields, or whatever in the REST API, there will be a way to use that data with Frontity.
That's absolutely true. Anything in the REST API you can use within Frontity, and that even applies to Yoast SEO. The recent release of Yoast SEO now adds all the head stuff that's used for SEO into the REST API, so you can consume that. So that last thing I showed you using the head element, you can, anything that Yoast export or includes in the REST API, you can dynamically add into the head element in your, or the head component in your theme. So anything else? That's, Michal, have you got anything that?
I was just looking at some other questions here.
Sure.
So, for example, another question that somebody had was, you use Tiny Router for routing. What do you use for state management? And yeah, that's a good question. We, like you mentioned already, Michael, so Frontity comes with a state manager. It's called just Frontity Connect. And at the moment, it's actually a fork of another state management library for React called React Easy State. We did a fork of it in order to customize it a little bit and add some features that that we needed for it to work with Frontity. Yeah, you can look at the code in our repo. It's reasonably straightforward. It's a small library that has literally a two-function API. So you connect, you just connect your components, like Michael has been showing you to throughout the workshop, and then you can access the state inside of those components, and you can dispatch actions to update parts of that state. That's pretty much it, really.
Yeah. Yeah, Michal just mentioned the Frontity repo. So what I'm going to do is just in the into Discourse, I'm going to put the link to the GitHub repo for Frontity. As I said right at the beginning, Frontity is open source and we'll welcome contributions. So I just posted a link to the repo. So raise your issues, add your pull requests, you know, any contributions, you know, if you want to contribute to an open source project, we're welcome any contributions.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
and I just wanted to add, yeah, so that's right. It's just in response to the question on Discourse. Yeah, the pattern is somewhat similar to Redux. Well, actually, I would say it's more similar to MobX. If any of you are familiar with that type of architecture for state management. So Redux is more focused on immutable data structures, and yeah, like you mentioned, Marla, it's a bit more boilerplatey. We have a smaller API that's more similar in concepts to MobX. Yeah, just wanted to mention that.
Yeah.
Yeah, back to you, Michael.
Yeah, Juanma, you should be able to use your camera now. I didn't realize that. Yeah, because you left the thing and rejoined, you weren't the co-host anymore.
Okay.
Awesome.
Hello.
Now we can see you. Yeah. Welcome back.
I wanted to add that there is one question about the deployment, and in the documentation side there is a guide of how to deploy a Frontity site in Vercel that we recommend because it's the easiest way to have a Frontity project in production. So the WordPress site should be in a PHP server or your hosting, but the Frontity project that requires a node server can be deployed into Vercel very easily. And there is an answer in Discord pointing out the URL of the documentation where all of this is explained.
Yeah, and if you go to the repo for this tutorial, and I'm posting the link again. In the tutorial, I do briefly mention deployment right at the end and give you a link to that document that Juanma just mentioned so that you can see how to deploy. Okay, so I've just posted once again the link to the project repo to remind you. You can run through the whole tutorial again. It's all there with the missing steps that I didn't have time to cover. And please remember to enter our competition. You know, build something great with Frontity, enter our competition, win a 1-hour consultation with one of the team. And if you're not lucky enough to win, then you still get a swag bag anyway with t-shirts, sticker packs, and whatever our marketing people put in swag bags. So I think it remains to thank everyone for participating. Right, I think we started off with about 50. I've managed to retain 43 participants, which is, you know, right through a 3-hour workshop. Awesome. Thanks for staying till the end, guys. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you go on to do something fun and awesome with Frontity. And if you do, enter our competition. And we'd also love to, even if you don't enter our competition and you do something longer term, you know, after the 3rd of July and the end of the competition, then we'd love to have any projects you build in our showcase. We're going to got my showcases page in our docs, which is going to be transferred to our main site to show off what Frontity can do. So any third-party projects that are of interest, we're adding in there. So we'd love to have that. And it just remains to thank Juanma and Michal for all your help and keeping up with the chat and answering all the questions where I didn't have the bandwidth to deal with. So thanks, guys.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, awesome job.